two dicks. Wow.
Yeah! Here we go! Here we go! Here we go!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Football Talk podcast.
And having to go, yeah, but he did kind of do this.
What I'm hearing is you just want Tom Brady dead. Like that's all I'm hearing at this point. You just want Brady
Well,
dead.
not anymore. He's retired now, so I'm good with that. I don't want him calling games anymore because holy hell, he's hard to listen to.
Enough angry and, depressing from myself. Sterling, thank you for being able to sit there as my therapist for this episode.
Start the game already!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Football Talk podcast, and we are now officially in what every football fan can only describe as probably the worst time of the year. You don't have free agency to look forward to, you don't have the draft to look forward to, you literally just sit here for weeks upon weeks, going into months, just going, I want football back. But as always, I'm Brendan. Joining me as always, Sterling. How you doing, my friend?
Doing good, man. I mean, we're, into May now. Weather's nicer. As you said, the draft is over, so really we're at that dead point where we've got, rookie mini camp will start up in a few weeks probably for a lot of teams. And then there'll be a lot of nothing for June, and then, just the voluntary training camps at that point, and then training camp will kick off July. So a couple months of not a whole lot for us to talk about, not a whole lot going on. I know my team, there still will be some news coming up because, there still isn't a starting quarterback for Pittsburgh, so we'll see what happens there. But
Yeah.
so at least we'll have something to come down the pipeline at some point in the next 8 weeks.
Yeah, and when we say there's nothing, there is stuff that happens. Again, you'll have a rookie training camp, which I think most teams are going to start this week. I can't fully remember exactly when most of those start, but I think most of that kicks off like this upcoming week, or if not, then the week after. It's relatively a short amount of time to get the actual rookies in for that training camp, and then it's basically nothing, and then you start to get into like a voluntary, and then you get into basically June, and it's like, all right, football's kind of back, and yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, kind of talking about your Pittsburgh Steelers, and a lot of the focus here in today's podcast is going to be kind of on the draft, because again, when we were recording our podcast last week, the draft was still literally going on, so we were obviously discussing a lot of the stuff that was happening, but for us, it wasn't complete. We didn't see the full, complete picture of what our teams were going to officially look like. And so we're going to kind of have a little bit more of an in-depth conversation because we know everything is final. We have the undrafted free agents signed. We have all the draft picks drafted at this point. And so, yeah, I want to, both of us, we're going to talk about our teams today. And I do want to start with the Pittsburgh Steelers because, again, you brought up a really, really good point where there's still probably going to be news about this Pittsburgh Steelers team because, let's be honest here, at today's moment, this is the Pittsburgh quarterback room. Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, and Skylar Thompson.
Yep.
And I know, as someone who has had to witness quarterback rooms like this in the past, you kind of look at it and go, it doesn't necessarily inspire a ton of hope. Again, Mason Rudolph was a former third-round pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that was back in, I want to say 2017, 2018, around that time. It might have been even 2019. But he was kind of hailed as the heir apparent to Ben Roethlisberger. Just never really panned out. Had a few good games here and there. Got assaulted by Myles Garrett at one point. Then went off to Tennessee last year to kind of be the backup quarterback. Eventually got some starting. But Skylar Thompson, backup quarterback around the league, really wasn't a large conversation. And then ultimately, I believe it was, as I'm looking here, in the 6th round, Will Howard, the quarterback out of Ohio State, is being heralded as currently the main backup to Mason Rudolph.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, for myself, I'm not displeased with this quarterback room. Like, I would be happy to go into the season with Mason Rudolph. and see how the season goes and let Will Howard develop and learn Arthur Smith's playbook and the system and what is expected before throwing him to the wolves. I know a lot of the Pittsburgh fans and a lot of the media around Pittsburgh, they're still clamoring for a de facto starter, somebody who has been a starter around the league, whether that be a free agent Aaron Rodgers or a trade for Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr or something like that. I know a lot of people still want some move to get done to bring a bigger name in. For myself, I'm happy with Mason Rudolph. I have no problem giving this guy his chance because until you truly do, you're not gonna know, like having a guy come in who was practicing with the third squad all season and then being like, here, win a playoff game. And it's like, what do you expect? But letting this guy go through all of training camp as the starter, practicing with the ones, seeing everything, and then truly going out there and being the starter, I think it could be good for him. And I don't think it'll be as bad as some people are thinking.
Yeah, when it comes down to this quarterback room, and you are fully well aware that my position is the Steelers need to pick a road to go down when it comes to their quarterback situation, because again, if you don't have a quarterback in the NFL, well, it doesn't matter how good of a team that you have.
Yep.
You could get to the playoffs with just a below average or an average to below average quarterback. We see teams do it, not very often, but we see teams do it. And for instance, the Steelers have done it the last couple of years. Now, I don't know if we're necessarily going to say that Russell Wilson is a average to below average quarterback. I think most people would say he's probably average to maybe a little bit above average, even at this point in his career.
Yep.
Same thing with Justin Fields. But it's one of those things where I would look at this and say the Steelers just need to kind of stop the quarterback. They go into the season with Mason Rudolph. They say, listen, prove to us that, all those years ago that you were the guy. And if you go out there and you have amazing success, then we're going to be extremely, extremely happy. And if you don't, well, then the team's probably not going to be super successful. They're still probably going to win 8 to 9 games regardless, because this is Mike Tomlin, and who knows which voodoo tricks that he uses to make sure that he's never had a losing season before. But it's one of those things where, again, if the Steelers don't make another move at quarterback, then ultimately what that means is they've kind of picked a lane. And picking a lane, whether it's a positive lane or whether it's a little bit more of an uncertain lane, you're still going down a path. And if it's Aaron Rodgers, well, then you're saying the duration of that contract that you have with Aaron Rodgers, it's Super Bowl or bust. It's nothing more, or it's nothing less than a Super Bowl. If it's Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr, same sort of situation. These guys have the capabilities of bringing a team to the playoffs. They've never had a team this stacked before with this level of coaching. So, and if you don't, then you go, okay, this is literally just an experiment for Mason Rudolph. If he's the guy, then perfect. If not, then who cares?
Well, exactly. And that's exactly it. They're at a point where there are two very clear defined paths that they can take. You go for that veteran and you go, okay, it's 1 to 2 years of, as you said, Super Bowl or bust, and then we have to start a rebuild. Or you go Mason Rudolph and you go, okay, it's not necessarily Super Bowl or bust, but we need to see if this is the guy, and you give him that shot. And it runs the risk of continuing this carousel for sure, where we reach the end of the season with 9 or 10 wins, a wild card loss, and go, okay, well, next season it's going to be Will Howard or insert quarterback name here, depending on who's out there on the free agent market and where quarterbacks land in the draft for Pittsburgh next year. That's pretty much what it'll be. But I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing, because that really is just speeding up that process of the rebuild by 1 to 3 years, because that's the exact thing you're going to be doing as soon as Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr is finished. is you're going to be right back into that quarterback search. And so I would rather them just continue doing it now. You look at this draft this year, they took that quarterback in the 6th round, they took a running back, and everything else was defense because that's this team. They look at it and they go, okay, we have a good enough defense to win 6 to 8 games. If our offense and our quarterback can manage to win us 1 to 3 additional games on top of that, we're guaranteed a playoff spot. And then it's, well, now this offense has to perform against the best and prove they can beat the best. And that's been sort of the formula for this team ever since Ben Roethlisberger retired.
Well, it was even that formula the last couple of years of Ben Roethlisberger as well. Like I would say maybe like the last year of Ben Roethlisberger, that was kind of the
That
formula.
No, I don't think that was the formula. That was the poor coaching at that point.
Mm.
Because we still had the offensive firepower. If we had a coach that wasn't afraid to call something other than a wide receiver screen or a hitch pass, then they still would have been putting up 400 yards a game, 3 passing touchdowns, because Ben was still capable of doing that. It's just Matt Canada was like, no, we want to be Tyreek Hill, even though we don't have somebody as fast and dynamic as Tyreek Hill. So that's where I don't think that was the formula then. We still had the talent on offense that we could have been a juggernaut with the right coaching hire, but that was a horrible coaching hire.
Yeah, you and I just go back years.
Yeah.
You can see us bitching and complaining about Matt Canada and just how brutal that guy was. And you know, it is going to be really interesting to see what happens with the Pittsburgh Steelers, because again, you look at this draft class here, and again, Derek Harmon, we talked about him. He's going to be an amazing player, kind of be the ultimate replacement for Cam Hayward when he eventually decides to hang it up. Caleb Johnson. If we go back to my big board of running backs, he was my 4th running back in this class. I was very, very high on Caleb Johnson. This is a guy that doesn't have a lot of tread off the tires because, again, he wasn't a 3-year starter. Had an unbelievable season at Iowa this year. He models his game after Derrick Henry. Now, he's not as big as Derrick Henry, but that's a good player to have. And Caleb Johnson is quickly going to become a fan favorite for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, again, you look at ESPN, they have the depth chart. They say Jaylen Warren is the starter. I think you're going to see Jaylen Warren as the starter going into training camp. Once training camp is over, it's quickly going to be Caleb Johnson, because Caleb Johnson is a do-it-all type of running back. I was looking at that guy going, like, if the Bears get a hold of him, ooh, look out. But now you put him on the Steelers and you go, damn, you want to talk about a Najee Harris replacement that's going to arguably be a better player than Najee Harris? This is the type of guy. And just a phenomenal, phenomenal pick. You look at Jack Sawyer in the 4th round, the edge rusher out of Ohio State. That was just kind of like a nailed pick. Because again, TJ Watt is not a young man. He's not going to retire next year or anything. But, you know, Jack Sawyer had a bunch of talented plays at Ohio State the last couple of years. Now, he wasn't considered a top guy in this class, but this is a guy that you could easily look at and say, could this be another Alex Highsmith for the Pittsburgh Steelers? And you could ultimately look back and go, yeah. Yaya Black, the D tackle out of Iowa. Funny enough, it's funny how the Steelers went 2 Iowa picks and 2 Ohio State picks in this draft. Will Howard, obviously, the Ohio State pick. And then you had Carson Bernier from linebacker from Washington, and Dante Kent, the corner out of Central Michigan. So pretty much those 2 7th-round picks, they're exactly that. They're 7th-round picks. They're probably not going to be much. Again, Carson, the linebacker, he's really going to be depth. And is it impossible for these guys to be good players? No, just incredibly unlikely. Again, we're really only looking at the first 5 picks of the Steelers team. And again, when we talk about my Bears, we'll be saying the exact same things anyways. That's basically what every single team in this draft. But again, you just look at the first 5 picks. Derek Harmon, Caleb Johnson, Jack Sawyer, Black, and Howard. All really, really solid. Now, you don't know what Will Howard's going to be, if he's going to even be a good quarterback in this league. But that's something for the Steelers fan base to kind of look at.
Well, exactly. And we knew a quarterback needed to be taken. That this was a good option. A lot of the scouting reports and things I've been seeing, a lot of people are comparing him to a Josh Allen style of player, which right now in this league, that's what the quarterback is. You got to be mobile, savvy, and willing to take a hit. And if Will Howard is able to do that, then this could be a good thing for this Pittsburgh Steelers team going forward.
Well, and not only that, this is a dude that won the national championship this year.
Hmm.
Like he came in on a brand new team and they said, "Hey, you're a transfer quarterback for us and we're giving you the keys to the castle." Now, you want to talk about a team that is basically a pro team was that Ohio State unit. Again, they have the best safety prospect that I've ever scouted, and he's still not even draft eligible this year. He's going to be
Yep.
draft eligible in 2026. You want to talk about a safety prospect being drafted in the top 5? Caleb Downs, if you're a fan of football, watch Ohio State games and watch Caleb Downs because the dude, like, it's ridiculous. He's that guy. Like, we're
Yeah.
talking about a safety being a top 5 player here.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
like we talk about him and you watch him play, it's like watching the next Troy Polamalu, the way he's out there on the field and just flying all over and does everything.
yeah,
He's so dynamic and unique. He's going to be a top 5 for sure as early as next year.
yeah, in 2026 without
Hmm.
like he could have gone easily top 15 this year in the draft if he was eligible.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's the kind of team that Ohio State had, and then you want to talk about Jeremiah Smith also being there as the wide receiver. Like that's a generational wide receiver playing the game, and you just kind of saw that. Like Will Howard basically did that meme of I'm gonna close my eyes and just throw it up in the air and say fuck it, Jeremiah Smith's down there somewhere. Like that was
Right?
literally sometimes what Will Howard would do, and when you have a talent like that, sure, you also had
Right.
Emeka Ibuka, who was a first round pick wide receiver this year.
Hmm.
Like that team was really, really good. And we'll kind of have to
And that bodes
see.
well for coming into a team where you've got George Pickens and DK Metcalf, which are both guys where you could go, I'm just going to close my eyes and huck it down there. One of them's going to get it. The other
Yeah.
one will clothesline the cornerback while the first one catches it.
Yeah, exactly. And, I kind of want to talk about this Steelers team, not just their draft, but their offseason, because going
Hmm.
into free agency, they didn't really make any big time moves other than the George Pickens move. But we kind of ultimately sat back and went, the Steelers are still having a really bad offseason because they don't have a quarterback. Like, sure, you
Yeah.
got, I might have said George Pickens, I meant DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
You got DK Metcalf, but no one is going to sit back and say DK Metcalf is a top 10 receiver. He's top 20 for sure,
Hmm.
without a doubt, but he's closer to being 20 than he is closer to being 10.
Hmm.
But
The thing he's top 20, but he does have the potential to be better with
oh,
a better quarterback. And if he
without
gets
a doubt.
somebody with that connection, you never know.
And not only with a better quarterback but with better coaching. And you kind of got that sense in Seattle. Even when Pete Carroll was still there, it was kind of like one of those situations where it was, we have this unbelievable talent, but we don't have the offensive guys in the coaching staff that are going to be able to elevate
Yeah.
him. And then when Mike McDonald took over last year, it was such a defensive minded guy where it was, I don't know how to elevate this guy because I've never tried to elevate a wide receiver with this talent set. Now he comes into Pittsburgh where it's going like, this is a place where wide receivers play really, really well, but they also piss a lot of people off and get shipped off right away. And then you have a offensive coordinator in Arthur Smith who Matt Canada wanted to run just nothing but wide receiver screens. Arthur Smith likes to run nothing but running back tosses.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really interesting to see how that offense ultimately operates this year because it kind of feels like they got better, but at the same point, it also feels like they're going to be the exact same.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's until the product's on the field, we aren't going to truly know how this team has changed if it has at all. In terms of their off season, if people are giving them a grade, give them whatever grade you want, really. The thing with Pittsburgh is th- they jumped into the market last year for the first time in a long time. You know, they signed Patrick Queen, and everybody was like, "Wait, Pittsburgh
You did
Steelers
something in the
don't."
off season?
Well, they did something in free agency. The
That's what I meant
Steelers
to say.
team often doesn't sign a lot of free agents because every time they have, it burns them.
Hmm.
You know, so they don't do it very often. But I mean, last year, big signing of Patrick Queen. This year, big trade for DK Metcalf. So I mean, the fact that Pittsburgh now is doing one big move at the start of free agency, that that's different from how this Steelers team has been the last 25 years.
Yeah.
You know, it was very much a we build through the draft. We don't care if you're a free agent. Like good luck. Go to Baltimore, go to Cincinnati. We don't care.
Yeah.
That was often the way it was. And so any big name coming in through trade or free agency in the offseason for Pittsburgh, I consider that a win because that is more than they've done in the past. You know, and so they improved a position with a player, and then they sat back and they went, okay, strategy wise, we lost a lot of players signing to other teams for decent contracts. And that is why Omar Khan stood and waited until the draft, because any more signings and you start losing those compensatory picks for next year. And they now have 4 going into next offseason, which is quite a boon going into a draft. That bumps them up to, I think, 10 or 11 picks, because I think they're still missing 1 pick from a trade. And so either way, that's a lot of draft capital going into next year's draft that they are going to be able to use to move up throughout the draft, or at deadline this year to increase stock or increase players. That so I don't consider this offseason a loss. You know, I don't consider it bad, but it's by no means an A or B grade. It's like a C, C plus maybe. Just that they didn't fail the grade. The only thing that's lacking right now is a star quarterback. Really, you look at everything else on the team, and a star quarterback is the only thing that's missing, which has kind of been the case for this team since Ben Roethlisberger retired. You know,
Yeah.
like even the wide receiver room is improved this year over last year,
Oh,
I would say,
undoubtedly.
right? And so, and with the addition of Caleb Johnson, I consider that an upgrade over Najee Harris. I love Najee Harris, but the issue I started having with him is he did not have any gas in the tank. It was just a slow, rumbling run, which was great if you were just running HB dives. He was getting 2 to 3 yards each time. That was good.
Yep.
But as we talked about, Arthur Smith likes the HB toss more. And so those 2 to 3 yards that Najee Harris is running only gets him from catching the ball to the line of scrimmage. And that was where the issue started coming in. You know, and with Caleb Johnson, he's got the wheels. He can run a lot faster than Najee Harris. And so having him there, if he's able to take that job from Jaylen Warren, which he will be given every opportunity to do so, then that will be great. I won't be mad if he doesn't. If Jaylen Warren balls out and keeps that starting position, we've seen what Jaylen Warren can do. He is a feisty little bugger. He, you know, I know you don't watch CFL, but he reminds me a lot of Mike Clemens, pinball, who played for the Toronto Argonauts for a lot of years here in Canada. And just that smash mouth, he'll run straight into you, knock you down, and then just start running again. And so that's fun to watch. And if Caleb Johnson doesn't get that starter role, guess what? That means he's going to be on the 2 squad and practicing right there with Will Howard every day. And so the two of them are going to build a lot of chemistry going into next season if that is what happens.
Yeah, and if Arthur Smith is smart, he will be looking at both of those guys going, we don't necessarily have a dedicated starter. We're going to use both
No.
guys. It's basically going to be like you get 2 runs and then you take 2 plays off. Johnson, you
Well,
get 2 runs. Like it's going to essentially be that. But going back to
that's
the
what the Steelers have done for the last 3 years anyway. So I
yes,
fully
yes.
expect that.
But yeah, going back to the compensatory picks, their Steelers are projected to have a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th, and a 6th going into next year, which is going to be absolutely huge because it's next year's going to be interesting because I know when we talk about next year's draft, we immediately go Archie Manning, Archie Manning, Archie Manning, but the other big thing with Archie is yes, he is draft eligible next year, but he's only started 4 games at college. So
Mhm.
he comes from a rich family. So there is no incentive for him to try to get out of college right away to go into the NFL to make his big boy money. And we also live in the NIL world where you don't need to leave. And with Archie, there's a really good chance he's sitting back going like, you know what? I'm going to stay here for a year, maybe
Mhm.
two, maybe
Yep.
2 years, get my full education, make a crap load of money while still playing college football, and then in maybe 2027 enter the
Yep.
draft and go, hey, yeah, I'll easily be the first pick there, because we saw it with guys like um Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck in the year where he was draft eligible, the year that Cam Newton went first overall, that was technically Andrew Luck's first year being draft eligible, and he went, I'm gonna go first overall probably this year, but I'm gonna return to Stanford, finish my
Mhm.
education because I'm a literal rocket scientist level genius, and then I'll be first overall next year. And he
Yep.
was. And so, like, to me, that's a very easy decision. So then you look at some of the other quarterbacks like Lenora Sellers, who is South Carolina's quarterback, who's also projected to kind of be in that first overall pick range. Same sort of situation with him. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that quarterback class next year. Again,
Mhm.
you could easily
Yeah.
see all those guys immediately just go, yeah, I'm projected to go first overall. Sure, I'll enter the draft. Like, whatever.
Yep.
But
But I mean, we talked about it a couple times already during the season with Arch Manning, and it wouldn't shock either of us to see him play out this year in Texas, have a good year, and go, you know what? No, I'm going to stamp my legacy on my college career, just like everybody else in my family did at their respective colleges, and I'm going to try and win at least one national championship with Texas.
yeah,
I think that is the goal. Is he wants a national title in college.
and
And
he's very capable with the team that he's on
he
right
is,
now of doing
you
that.
know it. And that Texas team is very capable too. We saw what they were last year with Quinn Ewers leading them. With Arch Manning, it arguably they should just go upwards.
Yeah, they should be
They should
better.
get better, you know. And so 2 years of that, we could see Texas go to back national championships here if Arch Manning decides to stay, and he very well may do that. You know, we saw it with a lot of the players this year. You know, the quarterbacks especially, where they were projected and people were talking about them going higher in the draft, and they fell so far. You know, a la Shadur Sanders and Quinn Ewers. I know you weren't as high on Quinn Ewers, but a lot of people were. And so with the two of them, there's been a lot of talk now with how far down they went in the draft, going, you're going to make as much over your 4 year rookie contract as you guys would have made just playing one more year of college with the NIL rules that are in there now. And so that definitely plays a part for these guys if they're looking at it going, do I want to make 4 million or do I want to make 900,000 for the next 4 years to equal my 4 million?
Yeah. Well, and for me with Quinn Ewers, people forget that he was my fourth rated quarterback in this draft.
Yep.
Like, I was pretty high on Quinn Ewers, and the fact that he went all the way in the seventh round, I thought was dumb. Like,
Yeah, I just know you weren't really projecting him much higher than late third or fourth round for the most part.
yeah,
You
like,
know, and even there, he would have been making less money than just going back to college and doing the NIL.
no, totally. And it's again, we kind of veered off of the Pittsburgh Steelers talk a little bit and kind of talked a little bit about next year's class, but again, it's kind of coming down to this situation of where their guys were projected to go higher than what they were. Like, I thought
Mhm.
Will Howard, because I'm pretty sure in my last mock draft I had Will Howard going in the third round to the Raiders. Like,
Yep.
it was one of those things where I'm like, this is a guy that, like, he's a national championship winning quarterback. Yes, he had all those things that I mentioned earlier, where he had all these weapons and blah blah blah, had the coaching staff, and like he is without a doubt a talented player. But as we kind of said, I don't really like draft grades or off-season grades when
No.
the off-season finishes, and I ultimately consider the off-season to kind of finish after the draft, because all of the big time moves have kind of finished. Yes, there's still some free agents out there. Ali, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb is still available. Like, there's still
Mhm.
talented players out there that there's going to be signed. Again, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers being out there as well. But, none of those moves are necessarily going to be needle movers. And if the Steelers do go out there and sign Aaron Rodgers, that puts so much pressure on this team to finally get it done. And as we have discussed throughout this season, even with Aaron Rodgers, this are we confident in saying that the Steelers are going to beat the Bills? Are we confident that they're going to beat the Ravens in the playoffs or the Chiefs in the playoffs? Or even the Bengals in the playoffs with an upgraded defense? And the answer to that is no.
Well, and the more important one too is when it comes to the playoffs. And as good as Aaron Rodgers is, you look at his playoff record and how he's done in the playoffs in the last since the last time he won a Super Bowl, and it hasn't been great. And so at that point, you got to look at it and go, well, if we're bringing this guy in to get us over that hump, that's a hump that he can't even get over himself lately. And
Yep.
so that's where my concern lies. Is it's if he was a veteran that we knew had that it factor when it comes to the big games and is able to turn it on, which if it was 30 or 35-year-old Aaron Rodgers, he might still be able to do that. At what, 41? Not so much.
Yeah.
And so that's where my concern lies is, will it truly be any better than what we've got? Because we got to remember that this defense is what's going to get them there.
Yes.
We know that as long as they stay healthy. Obviously, we always hope for health in this league. And I don't have the faith that Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to go out there in a wild card game against the Cincinnati Bengals or the LA Chargers and pull out a win.
Yeah, and it's as I've stated before, I don't love the grades, but if you were to grade the Steelers, like, this is where they started, this is where they ended. Like, they just kind of stayed at the exact spot. And for me, I know as someone who is an outside observer of the Steelers, it's frustrating to watch because you just look at it and go, it's just going to be the same old for just another year in a row. But,
Yep.
As we get into the season, it's going to be a situation of going like, oh, okay, this team is going. But as we even stated last year, we went basically all throughout the year where it was, this Steelers team is really good. Let's see what happens during that December stretch. Because once we get to that December stretch, we're going to fully know if this team is going to be capable. And then the end of the year on a 5-game losing streak.
Well,
Including
and
playoffs.
that'll be another telling factor for this team once the full schedule is released and we see where they're playing and when. That will determine how this team does as well. Because everybody last year, everybody I talked to, oh man, this Steelers team is a Super Bowl favorite. They look so good. Look at how many games they're winning. I, as the fan, had to keep going, guys, pump the brakes. We play 3 of the 5 best teams in the league in a span of 10 days. And if they cannot win one of those games at least, then they are not a Super Bowl contender. And they didn't. And due to that collapse, they just kept losing. They collapsed those 3 games and it just completely shot their momentum. It killed their confidence and they just couldn't get anything done after that.
Well,
And so that's the issue, is depending on how it lays out. If they give them another terrible 10-day gauntlet stretch again this year, near the end of the season, I expect the same collapse to happen again. If it's at the beginning of the season, maybe that's a different story. Maybe they struggle early and then they get it going late. It's tough to say, but the schedule will play a big part in where I decide this team will finish next season. We did last year at the start of the year, we did predictions for records, wins, and everything. And we were pretty spot on. There was 1 or 2 games where we were wrong on the win-loss, but the final record ended up being pretty accurate.
yeah,
And
for both of us
so,
on the Steelers. The Bears' hand, on the other hand, we were fucking massively wrong. Especially
yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
again, I was closer on that. We'll win 9 games. I know you were a little bit closer to that double digit wins for the
Yeah.
Bears, but yeah, we were both pretty accurate when it came to the Steelers, for instance. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Which
it's
really speaks to the Steelers team. That's what they are. They're very consistent. They're easy to predict, which is not necessarily a good thing when you're talking about game planning against other teams, because when you're that predictable, other teams know how to plan against you. You know, especially the good coaches, the Andy Reeds, the Kyle Shanahans, people like that. Those are the ones that end up picking this team apart.
yeah, it's like I remember there's a TikTok video of a Bradley Cooper movie of where he's talking to a girl and they're like meeting in a Burger King, and he goes, you know, there's a reason why people who are uptight about not wanting to eat this sort of food is because it's too consistent. And when you talk about consistency in the world of cooking, that's a killer because people say you want to strive for consistency. No, you want to strive to be the best of the best and try new things. That's kind of what we're seeing with the Steelers is that they're just too consistent and it's killing this organization. Now, they're winning 8, well at this point 9 to 11 games every single year, and so you're
Mhm.
not going to sit back and complain about that, but you're also looking at it going, yeah, we won 11 games this year and we're off to Cabo after the wild card weekend. And you know, as Steelers fans have said to me, well, I would rather have that than be in a situation, for instance, like your Chicago Bears when talking to me and going where it's you have one playoff run every 6 years. And I go, I agree. I hate where the Bears have been at the last 20 years, basically my entire life, of where
Yep.
I have never seen the Chicago Bears have back-to-back winning seasons. And the last time the Chicago Bears have had back-to-back-to-back winning seasons was when they won the Super Bowl. And when
Yep.
Mike Ditka was the coach, and I wasn't alive yet.
No, that was quite a long time ago for sure. You know, and that's hopefully that is changing for your Bears. Hopefully the Steelers can find a way to get over this hump, because that's just it. You know, we talk about how this Steelers team is treading water, you know, and they can't seem to get over that. But we also talk all the time about they're only missing one piece. It does happen to be the most key piece
I would say they're
as far as the
missing
players go.
two very important pieces.
Yeah, I mean, a good offensive coordinator would be nice as well, but
Doesn't even necessarily need to be an offensive coordinator. It's an offensive play caller and it's a quarterback.
yeah, yeah, but I mean, offense. I know what you mean, but with the quarterback, even with Arthur Smith, with a great quarterback, this team then becomes one of those top 5 teams. That
Yes.
is all that is missing. You know, like yeah, an offensive play caller would be nice. Then we wouldn't need a great quarterback. We could get it done with a middle of the road quarterback. But if you find a great quarterback, then you never know. I mean, the
A great
last
quarterback erases all odors essentially, but the problem is that
yep.
as I have seen with my Bears team, because again, I still think Caleb Williams is a great quarterback.
Mhm.
If you don't have the coaching, it doesn't really matter how good the quarterback is. So like I will kind of refute that a little bit because I've had to
Mhm.
change my tone on that message because of what I saw last year. Because again, no one in their right mind said Bo Nix was better than Caleb Williams in the draft process last year. Who did Bo Nix have as his offensive play caller? He had a Hall of Fame offensive minded play caller in Sean Payton.
Yeah.
Jane Daniels, he has Cliff Kingsbury, who is arguably considered one of the brightest offensive minds in all of football. Caleb Williams, can we name the coordinators? I can because it depresses me, but can most other people name the 3 offensive coordinators that Caleb Williams had this year? The answer is probably no. So like again,
No.
I do, so I will go back and say I refute that a little bit because we kind of saw it play out this year where it was if you
But
don't
I mean,
have the right coaching staff, even with a great quarterback, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's just instant success.
no, exactly. And but I mean, that's just it. Sometimes we see great quarterbacks come out of nowhere. And I was just trying to look it up. I couldn't find it, but who is the play caller for Tom Brady?
Josh McDaniels.
Well, hmm?
Josh McDaniels.
Josh McDaniels, back in his like in 2002, 3, like all the way back then, like when he started,
Yeah,
is
I
what
don't
what
think
I'm
it
thinking.
was Josh McDaniels, but
Because I mean that's I only bring that one up because the last time we saw an Ohio State quarterback go in the 6th round, all of a sudden he became the GOAT. And
yeah,
I know there's some that are clinging on to that, going, "Oh, maybe we found the next Brady," and I'm like, "Hey, that would be great." But I thought of it and I was like, I can't think of who his play caller was. Like, yeah, he had Bill Belichick, but Bill Belichick was more of a jack of all trades kind of coach. We saw him. He coached running backs and wide receivers and special teams and cornerbacks, and like he kind of did everything. And so he was unique in that way, and in the same sort of way that Mike Tomlin's a little more unique of a head coach.
they're the
And so
CEO style head coaches.
yeah, and so that's why I was curious who Tom Brady's offensive play caller was in his early years when he took over for Drew Bledsoe, because he was immediately successful. And I can't think, because like
Yeah, it's that's also a completely different world of football than what we live to nowadays, because that
oh, it
was
is.
when you know. But yeah,
Yep.
no, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like it has happened, but
Mhm.
I always caution people when they talk about, like, oh, well, it happened with the Patriots and Brady, why can't it happen to us? And I go, well, there's a
Because
reason we've only ever seen one Tom Brady before, and we've never
yep.
had another organization go out there over the span of a 20-year span where it was just nothing but success.
Yeah.
And they were competing for a Super Bowl literally every year. There was a point in time where Tom Brady had a better odds at making it to the Super Bowl than Steph Curry did at making a 3-point shot.
Yep.
Like, we'll never see that again. It's just absolutely crazy. But I know exactly what you're talking about there,
Yeah.
and it's gonna be really interesting to see what this Steelers team is ultimately going to do, because again, I look at that draft class and I go, this is a draft class that is very Pittsburgh Steelers. You're getting players that are going to come in, a bunch of defensive guys that are going to go do their job and be very effective. Again, you get yourself a really good running back in Caleb Johnson. I think you guys got a really good running back in Caleb Johnson, who, if you put the rock in his hand and allow him to run the ball 20 plus times a game, good things are going to happen. And I like the trade for DK Metcalf, because receiver was such a big need for
Yep.
that team. And
Well,
they did.
exactly. And that was the 2nd round pick that we sent for DK Metcalf, I believe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I mean, you really look at those first 3 rounds, and they got a true nose tackle to replace Cam Hayward when he retires finally. They got a superstar wide receiver with that 2nd round pick who's already established in the league. And they got a juggernaut of a rookie running back that could come in and take this league by storm with the right coach, a coach that likes to run the ball with a Derrick Henry style runner. It could be great things for this team. It's just, as we keep coming back to all the time, it's who's the quarterback, and is he going to be able to take that step to be an elite top 15 to top 20 quarterback? Because that's really it with how good this defense is. We talk about the Bengals a lot. Joe Burrow is
It's
so good that he only needs a top 15 defense and
top
he's
20.
going to go to the Super Bowl. It's a little bit the opposite with when you flip it, but this defense is so good that you really do just need a top 15 quarterback to be able to have a shot at the Super Bowl. It doesn't guarantee you like it would with the Bengals, because it's so much more offensively driven in the playoffs, but it, it whoever it is, if they can find a way to get in their rhythm and form a relationship with the guys like DK Metcalf and Pat Fryermuth, this team could be fighting for the AFC title.
Want to talk about a team that would be scary to go up against? The Bengals offense and then having the Steelers defense. Want to talk about a
That
team that never loses?
Yeah,
That would be a team that never loses.
hands down, never.
Yeah.
It not only never loses, but probably never wins by less than
20
25
points.
points.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It would be terrifying to think about. And
yeah,
I think obviously in the upcoming weeks, I know one of the ideas that we had is we're basically going to do like our building of teams that are like like this is the AFC North team, you take the 4 teams. Like I know that's something we have down in the
yeah.
pipelines
Yeah,
obviously.
doing sort of like it'll be like our own all AFC and all NFC. We haven't decided if it's going to be only active players or if we're going to go
I think
historical
it
or not.
should just be only active players
Yeah,
like right now. But then again,
right.
that's future podcast kind of talk, so that'll
Hmm.
be up in the air. But now shifting gears away from your Pittsburgh Steelers onto my Chicago Bears, because unlike your Steelers, everything has seemingly kind of gone right for the Bears this offseason. They got the best coach that they possibly could have got in Ben Johnson, who just happened to be the top coaching candidate this year. Then you upgraded the offensive line where you got one of the best guards, if not the best guard in the NFL, in Joe Thuney. You got the best available center that you could get either in the draft or free agency in Drew Dahlman. You got another good guard in Jonah Jackson, who was very familiar with Ben Johnson. You added a few players to that defensive line. Again, I'm a little bit less high on that. But then you go to the draft and you like, oh, like, okay. Like this, again, I went into this draft for the Bears saying they need to get themselves more offensive linemen. They need to get themselves more defensive linemen. They need to get a running back, and they need to get a tight end. At the end of the day, these are the things that this Chicago Bears team needs to do. First pick, they go out there and draft Colston Loveland, who, without a doubt, you want to talk about a draft pick that was determined by the coach. There's no other first round pick that was determined by who the head coach was than this pick. Who did Ben Johnson have in Detroit? Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta, after his rookie year, we're all sitting back going like, this dude's a top 5 tight end in the league. And then Brock Bowers came in and said, sit down, son. I'm kind of the best tight end in the league at the moment. And, kind of took it over. But Sam Laporta, still elite tight end.
If not for the injuries last year, I think he would have still been up there. He missed some time last year. That really hurt him.
He did. And
Yeah.
so the Bears go out there and draft basically Sam Laporta 2.0.
Yep.
And in Colston Loveland. And you just go, damn, like, it's hard to be upset with that pick. And then in the second round, you draft Luther Burden, who is DJ Moore 2.0. And you go, oh, well, we already have DJ Moore, but this guy is a little bit more suited to the slot position. So not only do we have our outside wide receivers, but now we also have our slot guy with all the other wide receivers that we brought in. So it's just weapon after weapon after weapon. And then in the second round, because the Bears had 3 ultimately by a trade back with the Bills, you ended up drafting Ozzy Trapalo, who some experts said was the most pro-ready offensive tackle in the draft class. Maybe not necessarily the highest potential out of all the tackles, but the most pro-ready. And you go, shit, like, like I'm sitting back going like, I wanted Mike Green at that point. I'm banging the table going, give me Mike Green, because I wanted an edge rusher. But I sat back and went like, shit, like this is just like a good pick. Like you can't be upset with that, because you spent the entire offseason going, we need to get offensive linemen. We need to, build this offensive line. And then you built up the offensive line and going, like, you heard me over the podcast saying, like, I don't know if I was comfortable with the Bears going Ashton Jeanty, because I was potentially thinking if a Will Campbell was there at 10 and Ashton Jeanty was there at 10, you got to go with Will Campbell, because that sets you up better long term. Now, neither of those guys were on the board going into pick number 10, so it didn't matter. But you just go, like, shit, like, this is a really smart move. And then with their final pick in the second round, they end up drafting Shamar Turner, who is kind of that flexible defensive tackle, edge rusher kind of player who's a mean guy who's going to go out there and really fit well in a Dennis Allen defense. And I'm just sitting back going like, yeah, sure, we missed out on Mike Green, and he's going to be unbelievable in Baltimore. Like, I think that was an amazing first two picks by the Ravens that they had. But I just kind of sit back and I go, well, shit. Like, they kind of did everything that I was kind of hoping that they would do, and then summon more. Now, Bears' fourth round pick, Ruben Hypolati, the second linebacker out of Maryland. I have no idea who the fuck that is. I will be very blunt and go, when the Bears drafted him, I just kind of sat back and went, who? Like, and everything that I've heard about this guy, he's fast.
Yeah.
And I go, that's great. Can he cover? Can he tackle? Well, he's fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
He can cover kickoffs and punts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, fourth round, and Zay Frazier, the corner out of Texas San Antonio, ball hawk. He had like 6 interceptions this year, so that's kind of more depth. Luke Newman, the guard out of Michigan State, just continuing to add a little bit more depth to that offensive line. And Kyle Monagani, I'm not really sure how to pronounce the last name yet, but dude had 0 fumbles in his entire college career.
Mm-hmm.
You go, okay, that can play. It's not necessarily the Caleb Johnson or, the Cam Scatabo that I was hoping for in the draft, but we'll see what a 7th rounder can do. But then again, you look at the Chiefs when they kind of went on that first run of their first for kind of trying to do that three-peat.
Mm-hmm.
They led the way with the 7th round pick running back, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. And to me, as a Bears fan, this is kind of terrifying because everything has been kind of going right, and I'm just kind of waiting for the hammer to fall and say, "Ha-ha!"
Yeah, and I understand that because it's been so long for you. And I mean, the other thing to remember, a running back in the 7th round is, unsexy as that might be, we forget that this team does still have DeAndre Swift. Yes. And yes, he didn't do a whole lot last year, but nobody on that Bears offense did a whole lot. Look at what Ben Johnson was doing with a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, who was catching the ball out of the backfield a lot, which is sort of DeAndre Swift's specialty. Yeah. And so that may be a situation where we see DeAndre Swift reemerge this season as a legitimate weapon because Ben Johnson's calling up plays where he is in the flat or just beyond the line and catching passes and making moves then. So that may have been something part of the process where, Ben Johnson got there, met with DeAndre Swift and went, I can actually work with this. Maybe we don't have to spend a top pick, a 3rd rounder, a 2nd rounder on a running back. Let's do this and see who falls to us late.
Now, Ben Johnson also knew DeAndre Swift because he coached him for a year in Detroit. And so then again, Ben Johnson was also the guy that said, let's sign David Montgomery and draft Jahmyr Gibbs and trade away DeAndre Swift. So, it was kind of one of those things where that's been kind of the battle that the Bears fans have had this offseason. The second that Ben Johnson got signed, where it was DeAndre Swift was just shy of getting 1,000 rushing yards this year, which again, as you and I have discussed, 1,000 rushing yards for a running back, like the new 1,000 yard rusher is 1,400. If you do that, then we're going to start talking about you being like a really talented back and being like one of those guys, because it feels like everyone in the NFL as a running back put in a right system and with an offensive line can easily get 1,000. So it's kind
because I mean, 1,000 yards in a 17-game season, that's only 58 yards a game.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
So it's not a high bar.
Exactly. It used to be you were having to get multiple 100-yard games every season to hit well above that 1,000-yard mark. And so
it's
not so much anymore. With 17 games,
if you get 60 yards a game. Yeah. It's going to be really interesting. But yeah, a part of me is looking at this draft class just going like, man, I'm full support of what Ben Johnson I think he can do for this Bears offense. But there's really no excuse for Caleb Williams now. It's going, we got you an upgraded offensive line. You already had 2 really good receivers. You already had a really good tight end in Cole Kmet. We got you a better pass catching tight end in Cole Kmet, who can also block really well. We also got you a really, really talented slot receiver. Now, I will say, when it comes to Luther Burden, I am slightly terrified of that pick. And
Yep.
the reason being was one of the biggest reasons why Luther Burden ultimately didn't become a first round pick, because this year's wide receiver class was really weird to kind of evaluate. There was no real consensus. I know a lot of people had Tet McMillan, some people had Matthew Golden, some people had Luther Burden as their top receiver. The biggest reason why Luther Burden probably wasn't the top guy was this year he kind of got bored of the offense that he was playing in, and he kind of stopped trying.
Yep.
And if you know anything about me, I don't want those guys on my team. They kind of terrify me. I had to watch a guy like that in Allen Robinson, his final year in Chicago, where it was this guy had so much talent and he was so good, he just stopped caring. And Luther Burden, for instance, he's coming into a team where going into night number 2 of the draft, there was already an insane amount of mouths to feed, because again, you need to feed DJ Moore. He's a top 10, he's a top 15 receiver in the NFL. You need to feed Rome Odunze because he was a top 10 pick last year as a wide receiver. You got to get Cole Kmet's touches. You're going to get Colston Loveland his touches. And then you also have to worry about DeAndre Swift and how much he's going to get the rock. And then you kind of look at it and go, oh, well, Luther Burden's there. Well, he also needs to get his touches. So if he's only getting 3 targets a game, is he going to be fully invested? And is he going to start causing problems? Like, that stuff worries me. Now, with Ben Johnson, he ultimately came out and stated he's very much like Jameson Williams and Antoine Randall L as our wide receivers coach and assistant head coach. He kind of slapped down Jameson Williams when he started to kind of pull some shit last year for the Lions. And he's like, no. So, like, I have trust in Randall L doing that, being like, you're not going to pull this shit here because we don't play that game. But it's still kind of terrifying to me, going like, I don't like those guys in those rooms.
No, I get where you're coming from. I mean, for myself, having dealt with a lot of those guys in Pittsburgh, I view that as it is big risk, but it is a massive reward.
It's
and
a
it's
good
worth
problem to have.
When it's a rookie deal too, it's a lot easier to cope with that. You know, if you're signing a guy like for example, the DK Metcalf signing, that's concerning because if his attitude starts going off, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yep.
You know, the same thing could have happened with DJ Moore in Chicago. If he started truly being disgruntled, that could have been a problem. When it's a rookie, you look at them and go, oh, well, there's the door.
He wants to play this game, we can play this game.
Well, exactly. You know, you're not paying him very much. You don't have all this money tied up in the salary cap dedicated to this player. And so if their attitude gets bigger than the team, it's very easy to ship them out, because wide receivers in that, you know, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range, they're dime a dozen in this league.
Yep.
And so that's a point where they just go, you know what? To hell with you. We're going to trade you to Dallas for a 4th round pick.
Speaking of Dallas, this week, for whatever reason, like, again, I always have Twitter up on my computer because it's something that I had, and they have a what's happening section, which is basically kind of like a trending section dedicated to your kind of feed. And it showed DJ Moore on that. And whenever I see a Chicago Bears name come up there, I'll click on that. And for whatever reason, Dallas Cowboy fans are convinced that they're somehow going to land DJ Moore. And they're like, imagine what CeeDee Lamb and DJ Moore are going to do. And I'm just like sitting back, scratching my head going, so you do realize that DJ Moore just signed the largest deal in Chicago Bears history, not even a full season ago. And he is playing for a team that has arguably considered to be a generational offensive mind, with a quarterback who some people still consider to be a generational prospect, to then send him to the Dallas Cowboys, where they have an offensive minded head coach who no one likes and thinks is arguably already on the hot seat, to also go to that same team where his former head coach was a guy he didn't like in Matt Eberflus. And then that whole conversation of, how the fuck are you going to pay for DJ Moore's contract?
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. They can't fit him in under their salary cap. And then, sure, like, it would be a great move for Chicago because the only way I see that happening is you guys get Micah Parsons back. So
Yeah,
that would be phenomenal.
I would
But
love
it's a-
that.
right? You don't love that?
No, I would love that. Like,
Yeah. Okay.
if you want to do apples to apples and say, Chicago, we will give you Micah Parsons for DJ Moore, I sit back and go, yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
But that's Cowboys fans all over.
yeah,
You know, they always come up with these weird, crazy theories, and then it's their year. Because remember, before the draft and at the start of free agency, it was TJ Watt. They were getting TJ Watt in a trade.
Yep.
Yeah, they were so stoked. You know, we got TJ Watt and we're going to have Micah Parsons. We're going to have the best defense in the league. And it's like, how are you going to pay for all of this? Exactly. Like, they don't use their brains. And that's why Cowboys fans are often the ones we make fun of the most.
yeah. Like, I just remember looking at that and laughing, going like there was a 1 second moment where I was like, are there DJ Moore trade rumors going on right now? And like, I'm sitting back going like, I haven't seen anything. And then I'm like, oh wait, we're talking about Cowboys fans here. Like,
Yeah.
arguably, probably the lowest IQ fan base out there, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, there's a lot of them. But I'm like, there was just that moment of just like, what?
Oh, I know, right? Yeah, because I'm sure throughout the process of this 2 month dead zone, because they get really squirrely during this time, we're gonna see them going, we're gonna be able to trade for Ashton Genty. He's gonna be our running back now. You know, we're gonna trade Dak Prescott away, but we're gonna get Caleb Williams or something like that.
Yeah,
It's gonna be so many ridiculous things out of the Cowboys fans that we all get to week 1 and we go, okay, let's watch the Cowboys lose because we need them to shut up.
Well, and like the other funny thing about that is that Cowboys fans will be like, oh, we're gonna trade for Joe Burrow, and then we're also
Yeah.
gonna have this guy and that guy, and well, it's just like every single fan base has their delusional fans where it's just no matter what this team does, we're winning the Super Bowl. You and I, we're not part of those delusional fan base. We very much understand what our teams are. Now,
Exactly. Yeah. Like I'm not a delusional fan. I'm a realist, but I am also a positive thinking. You know, like my team, a lot of times they're not looking that good, and everybody's like, oh, they're going to be worse. And I'm always on the positive side of it, going, you know, no, I think we can still at least win our division. Are we a Super Bowl favorite? No, but up to this point, I have never ruled this team out of winning this division because they are always capable of winning within their division.
yes, without a doubt. Now, me on the other hand, I am you for the love of God, just get a 500 record for 2 years in a row, please.
Right? I mean, hey, at least Caleb Williams is undefeated at Lambeau Field, so there's that.
Hell yeah, he is. And it definitely, when the Des White made the pick, or no, it wasn't Des White, it was the wrestler. I forget his name.
Seth Rollins, yeah.
Yeah, he goes up there. Yeah, by the way, we're in the shadow of Lambeau Field where Caleb Williams, the best quarterback in the NFC North, is currently undefeated. I'm sitting back going like, I don't watch wrestling. As a former boxer, it's kind of not in my DNA to go out there and do that. But like, I'm just sitting back going like, yes,
I like this guy.
Yes, I'm a fan. You know, and like, it was very.
Yeah, he's a big Chicago fanboy as well.
Oh, like, I only really know him from the wrestling world. Obviously, I know a few other wrestlers because they're in pop media and that kind of thing. But yeah, like, I've known about him being a big time Bears fan for sure. And it's always funny seeing a tweet when the Bears have a bad loss of just going, I fucking hate football. It's like, yeah, me too, buddy. Me too.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Especially after that Commanders game.
Oh, that was a bad one. That you know what? That was the downfall of last year. It's over. It's a new year.
Yep.
Hope for more positive. You guys brought in what, seven more guys to block for Caleb Williams. Granted, they can't all be out there at the same time, but at least 3 out of those 7 have to be good enough that he's not running around like a chicken with his head cut off.
Yeah, and for me, I look at Caleb Williams and I go, last year, there are people saying that Caleb Williams is a bust, that he's not a good quarterback, and I just sit back and look at those guys and go, you either don't know football or you are just an insanely big hater that has more problems in their life than what is under the surface. Because again, I mentioned earlier, Caleb Williams had 3 different offensive coordinators.
Mm-hmm.
Then he also had a head coach that got fired mid-season. He had no offensive line where he couldn't take a 5-step drop and trust it. Goes, well, he holds on to the ball too long. Well, when, you take 3 steps back and you already see your tackles being beat, and then your guard being beat, and your center being beat, and your other guard being beat, and you see 5 guys coming at you, and you just try to run around, that unfortunately means you're holding on to the ball a little bit longer, and that ups the time. And when you get to like week 18, you don't really trust the line a lot, and so you just kind of crumble.
Yeah.
For me, I just hope this year we see that difference in going like, okay, he's trusting his offensive line. He has play calls that are coming in that aren't brain dead, where it's going like, hey, like when Shane Waldron calling an absolutely horrible game and sits by Caleb Williams on the bench and starts telling jokes, it's going, maybe call plays that work and, have
Right.
offensive linemen that actually block for me and scheme them up to block for me.
Yeah. Well, exactly. That's a moment where Caleb Williams is going to be like, the only joke that I get to hear from you is your fucking playbook. Like, it's terrible, man.
There was a rumor that I heard that Caleb Williams had literally no support from his offensive coaching staff, that he had to build a film room in his house to properly watch film and get outside counseling to watch film with him because he got no help. And I'm just sitting back going like, why?
Yeah. That's not going to happen with Ben Johnson. I guarantee you, Ben Johnson is probably going to sit down with them with a fuck ton of Jared Goff film and be like, look, this guy was a former first round pick who was touted to be great, and he fell from grace in LA. We brought him over here, and look at the things he does. Calm, cool, collected in the pocket, throw it away if you have to. Like, there's no more sense of panic here for you, Caleb, is what Ben Johnson's going to be telling him. It's like, I need you calm. You need to be out there, trust your guys. If there's problems, we will figure it out and we will fix them.
Yeah, Caleb Williams, like, I think too many people said, oh, he's the next Patrick Mahomes. That was never my pro comparison. I said he's Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
If Ben Johnson can unlock Caleb Williams to be the next Aaron Rodgers, I'm up for it. I'm up for it. Just hopefully better playoff success than Aaron Rodgers and the ability to, beat San Francisco in the playoffs.
I mean, for you guys, it'll be the ability to beat Detroit or Green Bay is what you're going to need.
Honestly, I think for us, the biggest rival that the Bears are going to have that's not in the division is going to be Washington.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see the Bears Commanders rivalry be a big thing for a lot of years because, again, when you have Caleb Williams and Jayden Daniels be the first and second overall pick, those 2 guys are always going to be lockstep. Now, Jayden Daniels had a great year, and I've said this before. While Jayden Daniels had a better rookie season than Caleb Williams this year, I still don't believe that Jayden Daniels is a better quarterback than Caleb Williams.
Jayden Daniels had a much better coaching staff around him in his rookie year than Caleb Williams did. Yep. A coaching staff that was there from draft day all the way until season's end.
Yes.
Much different.
We both know a Commanders fan who throughout the year was spouting off that Caleb Williams sucks and that it's so much different. And I would love to talk to him because I haven't been able to talk to him for a handful of years and just go, do you really think Jayden Daniels would have done better behind that Chicago Bears offensive line? Do you really think that do you really think that Caleb Williams in the Washington Commanders system last year wouldn't have been better? Maybe not. Maybe. We don't know.
Uh,
And these are why I don't
yes,
like hypotheticals. But, you
well,
know,
exactly. And I mean, if we're looking at it hypothetically, I think Caleb Williams probably would have had a similar season to Jaden Daniels if he was in Washington. Whereas with that Bears coaching staff and offensive line, you could have put Patrick Mahomes there, and this team probably wouldn't have won more than 6 games
yeah.
because it was that bad. Like, take any quarter, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Tom Brady. Like, I feel like any quarterback in that situation would not have been able to get that team a winning record because the coaching staff and the management that was there was too dysfunctional and falling apart around the team to the point where, as you said, the quarterback had to set up his own film room because everybody else was too busy doing their own shit to actually worry about the product going onto the field.
Yeah. I still find it hilarious that when Tom Brady was deciding where he was going, that the Bears were his second choice. And I just
Yeah.
continue to sit back and go,
What could have been?
yeah. Now, I don't think Tom Brady would have won this team a Super Bowl. I just don't think Nagy was that good of a coach, and this, that, and the other thing doesn't really matter at this point. But yeah, so we are officially kind of going into the dead portion of the year. So pretty much a lot of the podcasts you are going to see are a lot more kind of like thought experiments, because in years past,
Mhm.
last year was the first year where we actually went through the entirety of the off season and basically put out a podcast every single week. We're going to be doing that again this year. Again, there might be a week or two here and there where we don't get it
Yeah.
just for different circumstances and shit like that. But yeah, expect a bunch more of some of those sort of videos. Again, we talked about earlier, where we talked about like some of the AFC North, like the all-star team and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And yeah, kind of talking down that particular route. But yeah, expect those sort of videos.
Yeah, and I mean, if you guys have any thought experiments you would like us to experiment with, please like leave them down in the comments. We'll take a look. We'll see what's there, and maybe we'll be able to come up with some video ideas from your ideas and do some unique thought experiments that way.
But yeah, that is it for us here today. Thank you all very much for watching. For Sterling, I'm Brendan, saying peace.